Hi everybody, Greg Charles here, Branch Secretary for the London South West Branch. We're going to be answering your questions about the upcoming CWU Royal Mail Ballot and talking about the future of our postal service. But before we start answering your questions, I'm going to ask Dave to introduce the context of the agreement. Welcome, Dave. And
Afternoon, Greg. Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Look, I think it's fair to say, and I'm sure that our members would acknowledge this, that we are at a critical point in the history of Royal Mail. The future of postal services is at stake here, the future of our members' jobs, and the future of the company. And I would say that more than any other agreement that our members have ever voted on, it's important that it's viewed against the environment that Royal Mail is now operating in, and whether or not it addresses the challenges that our members face, that the company faces, and that customers have been facing. Now, as we said at the Select Committee, there's no doubt that Royal Mail does face huge challenges, and some of those challenges are self-inflicted, and we're never going to stop saying that. But it's also undeniable that the way that society has permanently changed how it uses communications and how it sees the relevance of post and how we deliver post is that it's completely disrupted what we do. And our future is going to have to figure out ways of growing the business in other areas. So that's why it's really important that we make it clear from the outset here that the CWU accepts that without change, and we're talking here about USO reform, the company won't survive and prosper. And what we've been doing is working in that environment to try and get the best agreement for our members. So we are being very clear here that when you consider this agreement, you have to consider it against the real background that I think the company is now operating in.
thanks, Dave. Martin, would you like to add to that, please?
Yeah, and it should also be seen in the context that Ofcom changed the USO in July last year. And that has changed what Royal Mail's licence is to deliver a USO. And we've been obviously discussing with Royal Mail. They issued a dispute resolution process at the end of January where they said to us they have to change a licence on the USO in the coming financial year. And they could do that with agreement or without agreement. We made it quite clear we wouldn't be agreeing to ODM, and we would only agree USO change if it was linked with an important first step in equalisation.
Thanks, Martin. Look, we're breaking the session up into the different sections of the agreement. So we're going to deal with the DM26 USO reform first. We've took a number of questions from social media, Facebook and the like. So we'll go into the first question. Scott on Facebook says, why is the ballot company-wide when the issue relates to mainly just delivery offices? Martin?
Yeah, look, it's a much wider agreement than just deliveries. This is about whether Royal Mail has a future, whether we can make sure it grows in other ways, it changes the USO, it takes a first step on equalisation, which new entrants work in processing, collections, and right away through DPRs, etc. And it also is around whether we secure a level playing field, we have permanent job security, and we face the challenges which Royal Mail will face over the next 3 to 5 years. But we can rest assured that 80% of people we're actually balloting are from deliveries. This cannot be supported without deliveries memberships actually voting for it.
Thanks, Martin. Dave, I mean, there's obviously crossovers in terms of what sections are within the agreement. Yeah. What's your viewpoint on that?
Well, I think Martin sort of explained there that this is an agreement about the future of the company, and that affects every single member in whatever function they work in. The agreement covers a range of things, even things like the campaign for a level playing field, which I hope we get the opportunity to talk about later on today. This is about how we deal with Ofcom, how we also deal with the gig economy, which is putting Royal Mail under pressure by undercutting our members and by undercutting the company. These are things that affect everybody. And even the changes to USO at some point flow through to how mail centres will operate and how the rest of the company operates. So, there's no way that we could do anything other, and it's the right thing to do, to ballot all our members.
Cheers, Dave. William on Facebook says this is stepping into the actual mechanics of the USO itself. No to 3 people doing 4 people's work. Why are the CWU Royal Mail complicating the job, Martin?
Okay, look, USO reform has been approved by Ofcom to reduce costs in Royal Mail. What the change is, and it's a significant change, you can't see this with your current workload. So first class will still be delivered with parcels to every single address Monday to Saturday. But what you'll notice under USO reform, only 50% of your walks will get all mail sent to on a daily basis, Monday to Friday. That's a significant reduction in workload. Downstream access, second class, will not be sent to 50% of those duties. Now, this is a much better model than ODM, where there was a much higher call rate because the CDV pairing was delivering all mail Monday to Friday. This model means the CDV pairing is doing 50% of the route, just first class letters and parcels, and 50% all mail. They're currently delivering less than the current model and much less than ODM. This is where the fourth duty comes in, and whether that can be shared amongst the other 3 or supported by, there's an extra 3,500 extra walks coming in, 10,500 firms and rules and HCTs will be turned to 50% first class, 50% all mail, which can support the rest of the operation, and 6,000 part-time to full-time uplifts to ensure offices get out on time and support the overall operation. All of that wouldn't have been happening under ODM. This is a significant change, and those 20,000 support duties support the 4 into 3. And what's important here, nothing gets deployed until you have full resourcing in place. So every single job is covered, not like it is now. Full reserves are in place, and you don't remove any surplus until you're achieving all quality targets. This is a much different model to the current model, which is chaos, and much better than ODM.
So what you're saying, the optimised delivery model was a straight 4 into 3. With this, the technicalities of it is that if you've got a delivery office of, say, 20 duties, it isn't a straight lose 5 duties. It is actually looking at the mechanics within the delivery unit to enable you to have a negotiation locally.
It is, Greg. And you've got local input into this. Every unit is different, but you will have firms, you will have rurals, you have part-time to full-time uplifts, and you also have extra duties within that 3,500 routes coming back in.
And I'm told that there's options on the table for different duty patterns, re-signs, repicks, issues like that, all covered off.
There's 9 different attendance patterns, which all our members can choose from. And you've also got those Wallington duties, which are protected for those people who are currently doing Wallingtons.
Okay. Just going back to a question coming off of Facebook. So Adam says, what happens to non-drivers on a Saturday? There was a big issue with the optimised delivery model because of non-drivers, in particular on Saturdays. How's that been dealt with?
Yeah, the problem with non-drivers under the ODM model, and in fact Royal Mail's dispute resolution process, said that non-drivers would be classed as surplus under their proposal. And it's because non-drivers had to do all the mail Monday to Friday. They couldn't rotate. This model means there's a role for all non-drivers. All 6,000 non-drivers will have a role within this operation, and it's a much better model for non-drivers.
Excellent. One of the big ticket issues that's been in across the network is network times changing, earlier starts, later starts and later finishes. Has this agreement opened up an opportunity to discuss this, negotiate this?
It has. So at the review stage, and every unit after it deploys it will have a review. The first off, the 35 pilots will be able to move 15 minutes earlier on a Monday. There's 183 delivery units on the review which will be able to move 15 minutes earlier Monday to Saturday. And the good news is 66 of them are in Scotland, which had the worst impact. And all other units can review Mondays and Saturdays because there's workload within the unit before Wave 1. So there is an opportunity at the review stage to address start times.
Excellent. I mean, it's one for probably both of you, but within the sort of USO reform element to it, what safeguards do you believe you've negotiated into the agreement which will protect units, protect people? Martin, do you want to go first?
Look, job security is a massive thing. So there's no compulsory redundancies. There's full MTSF terms for new and old contracts. Royal Mail didn't want to give new contracts, MTSF terms. We made sure that was in there. The principle of everything being voluntary is there, and also there will be voluntary redundancies paid at the improved rate of 12 months. For those over 64 and a half, they never used to get the full terms. They will now get the full terms under this deal, and we've increased the multiplier for VR, and we've raised the minimum. We've also got a pre-deployment plan where no unit can be deployed without full resourcing, without going through a unit health check, going through all the data validation, giving it the best opportunity to succeed. When was the last time units staffed to TM1 and reserve levels? I haven't. I go into offices and people dread going on a rest day. This model has to have full resourcing. And then there's a review which says, unless that review is achieving all quality targets, then no surplus of employees will be removed. And Daniel Kaczynski is on record as saying to us in front of the Minister of State, if it's broken, we will fix it and put more hours into units if we need to. So we think there are real important safeguards which wouldn't have been there under ODM.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Dave?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think first thing we should acknowledge is that this will be a big concern for our members about their workload, because we're starting from not a good place. Members have had concerns about workload since Royal Mail imposed revisions that have never worked. And, you know, we've looked at this. We've learnt the lessons from the pilots. The union made it absolutely clear that we weren't going to agree the other model, which was Royal Mail's preferred way of doing this. That was the whole purpose of the pilots. And I think, you know, there's extensive safeguards in this agreement. And I would urge our members to, you know, get into speaking to their reps about that, get into speaking to, to looking at the agreement. You can see a full copy of the agreement. And without any doubt, you know, in a nutshell, we've got guarantees that there's no compulsory redundancies. We've got guarantees that the model that's going in is supported in a totally different way, a totally different distribution of workload that picks up the lessons from the previous model. It's got additional capacity that's built in. And there's no guarantees around the level of savings that Royal Mail are going to get. It will depend on getting into the actual process, starting the process, working together with your branches, with your local reps, all being supported by the national union, by our divisional and regional structures that will get in behind making sure that nobody gets left behind. No unit gets left behind in this. And by doing that, what will ultimately determine what is achievable is, can we deliver quality of service, which we haven't been delivering. So this sets a whole different range of criteria. And I think when you add all of that up, this is the right moment now. You know, that we can't avoid change anymore. We've got to get into it. We've got the right safeguards. And I think that the union has done a good job here in terms of protecting our members, but that job goes on. And it starts with our branches, our local reps. We've encouraged our branches and local reps to adopt a position that no one unit would get singled out here. So if you go through all of the safeguards, this is the best opportunity that we're going to get to deal with change properly, fairly for our members. Necessary change, as I said at the start, that we've got to, can't face away from this anymore. It's the right moment. It's in the interest of our members that we get on with this now, and that they support the agreement. And I do think, not many unions will be able to negotiate the level of detail that we've done. This point about local involvement, I do think this agreement lays that out more clearly than ever. We've been having conversations with a company about it's time that they trusted their local managers, it's time they trusted our representatives and the employees and our members in offices to come up with solutions that work. And as Martin said, some of these conversations that have taken place in front of the government. And they've also heard, Daniel Kretinsky say, if this doesn't work, we'll fix it. And that's how this agreement is positioned. It prioritises quality of service and workload over savings. And that's why it's the right agreement for moving USO reform forwards.
Excellent. Look, I mean, we touched on the government there, Dave. We're going to come on to them in a sort of another section towards the back end of the session. But I want to touch on something that you both mentioned there, the local involvement and how key that is and how paramount and what protections the local reps have got, but also the fact that I think you mentioned it, the go no go check off list, and how important that is to maintain again sort of control of the whole system. So Martin, what's that?
Yeah, it's crucial. For too many years, Royal Mail believe you have a standardised approach which operates across 1,250 delivery units, and we all know your starting point in most delivery offices is totally different. This is about the local rep manager, supported by our structures, being allowed to work on what works for them, what attendance pattern is chosen by them, how you work the USO reform, what is a 4 into 3, what is in scope, what's not in scope, how you deploy, what is the overtime levels you want, etc. is all down to local discussions. And we've got a support structure here, which is a regional RODs and divisional reps who will oversee that along with the area reps. It's time we got back to what works locally is normally what works properly.
Excellent. I'm going to move away from USO reform for now. Might touch on other elements as we go through, but I want to move into another section and a very, very important element of where we was and what we was campaigning on, which is the equalisation of the new entrance terms and conditions, something that was obviously introduced by executive action by Simon Thompson back during the dispute. A lot of members have been concerned about the equalisation not materialising yet, and that this first step is not significant enough. When will equalisation happen, and how can we trust the company on this? So Martin, again, sort of over to yourself.
Yeah, I think what's been really difficult here is we wouldn't agree ODM. So there was a pay deal, which was no strings pay deal, which is worth over 3 years, 980 million. And we fell out because we wouldn't agree ODM. And we linked, they wouldn't agree equalisation. And we ended up almost in a Mexican standoff 9 months later, not deploying the first step on equalisation in September or career path, but they haven't deployed USO for now 9 to 10 months. And, you know, we think that's the right decision that we didn't agree ODM. But that has meant it's been more difficult to get a bigger first step on equalisation. We believe we've got an important first step, and we got to remember, we sat in a room, myself and Dave, where Daniel Kaczynski said, we can't afford equalisation, it will bankrupt the company only 6 weeks ago. We've changed that, and we've got a commitment to equalisation. We've got a first step, and we've got a review by no later than January 2027 that the next step and the full plan will be on the table. And we believe that is a real important decision. If we don't get on that equalisation journey now, will we ever get on it? Not many companies do, and not many unions achieve this. It's not as much as we wanted on the first step, but we're now on the pathway to equalisation, and we believe it's important our members vote in that pathway and make sure we make that first step to equalisation.
Cheers, Martin. Dave, equalisation, tough one.
Yeah, look, I mean, we want more. We're going to get more, and we're confident we can get more. The key kind of choice that we faced was, do we run the risk of falling out again over USO reform when we know we've got to address that hugely important issue with a proper agreement, which we've delivered now, and our members will get the vote on. And, you know, in running the risk of them imposing that, because they've got to deploy a form of USO reform now, they're not going to get away with waiting, because it's been decided upon by Ofcom. So, you know, we wanted more, but here's the background to this, and this is what I meant at the start, that it's time that I think we all started understanding, you know, the environment that the company's operating in. And that's without giving them a pass on how they've dealt with the past, which has been wrong, and we're never going to stop saying that, as our members know, and we said at the select committee, but they put on the table, this goes back to the pay deal, they put on the table a 3-year pay deal. And that 3-year pay deal, as Martin just said, comes to around about £980 million. Now, that is the reality of how much a pay deal costs when you're dealing with a workforce as big as Royal Mail's workforce. So that 3-year pay deal was put on the table. There are people in the company who were adamant that that pay deal should never have been put on the table without USO change. We convinced EP that we needed the pay deal to be just given to our members without the change attached to it, because we were saying we weren't going to agree their model and we couldn't delay pay. We convinced them, but having put up front nearly £980 million, basically they got no change. 9 or 10 months later, there's obviously an impact on the level of savings that they haven't achieved over whether or not USO reform was going to happen. And the point I made earlier on is that there's no guarantee here that Royal Mail are going to get a level of savings out of this. It will come from the reality of what happens on the ground with all of the safeguards that we've negotiated. And against that environment, their position was ultimately, as Martin said, initially it was, we can't afford this. We convinced them that they needed to put a first step. Now, this first step's not unimportant. The point on 37 hours is that for the first time on the equalisation journey, we know that pay's different. We know that paid meal reliefs, old contracts, new contracts, no paid meal reliefs, and we know that they're coming in on 40-hour contracts. The company, by agreeing that they will no longer recruit people on 40-hour full-time contracts, that it will go to the harmonisation from anyone employed after June this year will only be employed on 37-hour contracts, the same as the old full-time contracts. By agreeing that, the cost of reducing this never gets any more. And I think what was happening is that they've been playing the card that it costs too much. But they were inflating the costs, and we don't believe it costs as much as what they're claiming. So getting that step there is an important one, and that protects the people who are currently on 40 hours as well, because it makes it easier for us in the next step to be able to get them down to 37, because there's around about 3,000 full-time new entrants on currently 40 hours. And by not increasing that number, we're in a better position to deal with this. The other thing is we have reduced the pay differential between the two. And as Martin said, and this is the choice, and we believe we've made the right choice here, take a concrete step now, pin them down to what the agreement says that they've signed up to, which is that there will be a review no later than January next year. That's not a long time in relation to this. And that's no later than. Let's see what happens. Let's see whether Royal Mail it starts to improve its retention rates. And that review, the output of that review, very clearly stated in the agreement, is the next step and the plan for equalisation. So we've got it back on track. And I always understand people, well, I'm sure we'll tackle the trust issue in its own right. And I understand when people say, but can you trust them? But, we've got an agreement here that the process going forward is going to be viewed by the UK government. They're going to sit over this and make sure that we move it forward in line with what we've agreed. So, we can't say that ain't a good position for us, whatever people think of the current UK government, is they are going to oversee the process of making sure that EP honour these commitments and all of the previous commitments that they made. So for that reason, I think we've made the right choice, because we weren't going to get any more this side of USO reform, and there was no point in delaying USO reform any longer.
We're absolutely going to be talking about trust and how we move forward and next steps and everything that comes along with that. But I want to stick with the equalisation for a little bit as well. So, Martin, there's a section within the agreement that talks, and you just mentioned, Dave, contracts. Their contracts, when they was implemented, in something I deal with on a daily basis, literally has allowed Royal Mail to utilise them as some glorified agency worker where their flexibility terms are, being taken advantage of. And I know there's something mentioned within the agreement. Can you elaborate? Can you give us some detail? Because I know for a fact that the new entrants, that's something that we're having to deal with, that they get moved out and they get pushed pillar to post from duty to duty, from office to office. But we need to secure them, and that is alongside equalising their terms and conditions.
Yeah, look, we're going to review their contracts. They were imposed by the 1st of September, and they're a very gig economy style contract. They're not allowed to do scheduled attendance. They're not allowed to do TPM. They can be moved to another unit tomorrow at any shift. This is not a good contract to be under. So again, the commitment within this, we will change that contract by the 1st of September. Just adding on some things Dave said,
yep.
The extra 1.75% does move us to 7.1% away from national parity of pay of the hourly rate of old contracts. And it moves 13.2 away from full delivery supplement. So this is a first step, an important first step. And we're also looking at increasing the hours of new entrants. The average hours is 31 hours. So the commitment in the agreement is to increase their contract to 35. Now, we aim to do that by a survey and then look at increasing the hours of the contract. That in itself, on top of the 4.75, on top of the 4 hours, could mean a new entrant on 31 hours moves to £73 per week extra every week, pensionable, 3,800 per year. So this is a package which needs to be looked at in that context.
Yeah. we're going to move back to a question that's has come from Facebook. So Lee on Facebook says, is the overtime rate being reduced? I would add, if it is, why?
Okay, so when you get into negotiations, you look at the data. New entrants were being given 1.25 overtime rate. And it was always going to have to be tackled because the old contracts were 0.98 for the first 10 hours and it drops below that. And we looked at data which says there was 42% of new entrants who never worked an hour above their contract. And remember, new entrants don't get paid overtime until they work above 40 hours. And what we've looked at is if you looked at the last 28 weeks of data, including the 2 cyber weeks, including the 4 weeks of Christmas, only 988 individuals worked above, out of 28,675 new entrants, above 40 hours. If you took out this 4 weeks Christmas pressure period and the 2 weeks of cyber week, it fell to 353. Now we've got all of that data. We took a decision that we were better concentrating more pay into weekly and monthly pay, which is paid regardless of whether there's workload variances, whether there's an overtime ban, it's paid all the time. We're also aware under USO deployment, all the TM1 is going to be filled, reserves, and there is going to be less overtime, potentially, apart from rest days. There won't be those pre-starts, etc., which new entrants currently do in old times. So it was a better decision to make sure it focused into their monthly pay and it's paid pensionable every single month, regardless of workload and regardless of overtime.
Thank you, Martin. Look, I think it's fair to say then that the message coming out loud and clear is that it was important to not lose the opportunity to make these first steps. Whilst, yes, most people will say we want more, and we obviously want more, but it's absolutely critical that we got the first steps alongside the USO reform to give us a platform for moving forward.
I think it's critical, Greg. I think we only get one go at this. If this first step is not there, I don't think we get on the pathway to equalisation.
Share that view?
Yeah, well, I think the other thing to recognise, and what we'd want to say to our new entrants members, is that, you know, we're not moving away from we will achieve equalisation. We've got it in agreements. The debate is it was always going to be in incremental steps. It was never going to be in one go. And do we think it's right at this point in time? We'd all want more, but in the circumstances that we've explained, is it right to take what's on offer now and build for the review, as you said, or do we think we're going to achieve more by trying to, I don't know, you know, hold things up? And our judgment is no, it's not the right position to hold things up in the hope that we can get more, given Royal Mail's position on they've paid out up front nearly 980 million and got no change for it. You know, these are just, unfortunately, these are the circumstances which I don't think are always fully appreciated, although I have to say that I think when we've been out talking to our reps and that, yeah, there's some who are being quite vocal about that point. We understand that, but there's a lot of people who understand that you've got to start moving forward. And I think Martin's spot on in saying the choice is, do you want to move forward, commit them to the next step, or do you want to keep hanging around with nothing? And we've made the right choice.
Excellent. Thank you, guys, for that. I mean, we're coming towards the back end of the show, but we've touched on a few very, very important issues throughout the process. I want to sort of throw it out there for literally how can we trust the company? The reset that is mentioned, there's been, you know, I know both of you have been saying that on, you know, for the past, well, ever since the dispute finished. The importance of parts 1 and 2. So this is a third element in a number of agreements that we've reached since that dispute. You mentioned the gig economy. So, you know, there's a lot of noise and a lot of market forces out there that are impacting, you know, the negotiations. So, yeah, so trust, reset, parts 1 and 2, level playing field, gig economy. Dave, do you want to start with
Let's deal
with a few
again
of
with,
them?
with this question of trust, because we had plenty of questions about that. So let's deal with it directly. Do you trust the employer to deliver on everything it's agreed? I'm going to say, truthfully, unions shouldn't trust employers, and we've got a track record of an employer here who's deliberately reneged on agreements in the past. There's no getting away from that. That's true. And therefore, you know, you wouldn't be in a union if you trusted employers. That's why you have trade unions. And simply what I would say to our members, you shouldn't trust Royal Mail if you're concerned about the issue of trust until you see the change locally. But that's not a reason, you know, trust is not a reason not to reach an agreement. It's the actual opposite, is that if you start getting into a place where you go, well, we don't trust them, well, you'd never come out your front door. You'd never do anything in society. I mean, there's plenty of things we don't trust in society. But we have an agreement. What's different now, I think this is a better way to phrase this, is that this agreement has been done in conjunction with meetings with the Secretary of State for Business and Trade. He's facilitated a process, as we reported some weeks back, which Martin started out, didn't start in the best way, but by the time we got through to the end of that process, I'm not suggesting they've been in all the negotiations, they haven't, but we've been checking in with them regularly. And the government has agreed to oversee the process going forward. And I would say to you that, you know, see it as an insurance policy, see it as the fact that we've now got the integrity of the government, if you like, pulled into our agreements with Royal Mail and EP. That's important. And I don't think there's anybody else in that place at the moment in the UK. So I don't think you have to worry about the trust point. You have to hold them to account. And what I'd say to our members is this, is that, you know, you trust them when you start seeing them change their attitude towards you, our reps, towards our reps, and can we resolve some of these problems? Changing their attitude towards the customers. The thing that I think, you know, undermines the question of trust in Royal Mail, I said self-inflicted problems, is when they come on the telly, when they go on and issue statements, they often don't come on the telly, they avoid that most times, where they say, like, this is a short-term problem on quality of service. This is a result of sickness, when they're not being truthful. And, you know, the challenge to Royal Mail is stop undermining trust by your actions. Start showing some humility towards your own workforce. And then the workforce will come on board and the workforce will trust you about what the real problems are that we're trying to solve it. So, you know, that's how I would deal with the question of trust.
Marty, Dave just mentioned quality of service. I mean, that's our should be our bread and butter, shouldn't it? I mean, that is what we was always top of the polls on for customer satisfaction, was quality of service. Do you think this agreement deals with potentially that issue?
I think it does. If you look at where we are, we have failed quality of service. Royal Mail's failed quality of service for a number of years since COVID. And they've done it because they haven't filled vacancies. And we've got a retention problem within the UK. 11% of old contracts leave, but much more of the new contracts leave. This is a model which means you have to have full resourcing. Ofcom is going to make sure they now achieve that, but equally, EP can't take any money out of Royal Mail until they get the debt ratio down, until they improve quality service. There are numbers safeguards in this. On reset, Greg, I had a meeting with Royal Mail only yesterday on how do you reset industrial and employee relations. Employee relations is crucial. Industrial, there's some work happening. We've got a further meeting tomorrow, and we want to make sure things change in the workplace. Respect, involvement, empowerment, all of those things should be happening in workplaces. And in industrial relations, it should be about making sure they're working together to support employees and agreeing the right terms of local involvement. Can I just touch on the level playing field?
Yep.
Because this is such a crucial area. If you look at Royal Mail now, letters are declining. But not only are letters declining, people are down trading from first class to the economy mail DSA. And revenue, while still strong with letters, is declining. Parcels was always meant to be the growth, and parcels are growing at 3%. But the problem is the revenue is not growing at the same level. Why? Because every Amazon, Yodel, Hermes, DHL all operate a self-bogus employment model where they don't pay don't pay national insurance, they don't pay pension, they don't pay a wage, they don't pay for van, they don't do anything which Royal Mail do. And they're able to win contracts off Royal Mail because they can charge a lot less. And Royal Mail, on the old contracts, have to bid at £29.50 because Royal Mail pay 13.6 pension contribution, 15% national insurance, and on the new contracts, £24.50. We've got companies like BT going to Royal Mail saying, unless you drop the price, we're going to every. And they're dropping the price, but then the profit goes. And unless there's a level playing field, the future of Royal Mail is really not in a good place. Which is why you've got to get through USO reform, you've got to get through equalisation to tackle some of the real issues. If we don't tackle, Royal Mail won't be in the same model as we do now. And we already know, EP are saying, if we can't get a level playing field, we're going to play in the self-employment model ourselves within 3 years. And these are things where, I know people looking at USO, but USO getting through that and securing a long-term future for our members' jobs is a real important thing for everyone.
That is the key, isn't it? Long-term future. So the long-term future and everything that we have is sustainable with growth.
Yeah.
Do you believe that this agreement gives us a platform for having a discussion, meaningful discussion about actually growing the business? Because many of us feel it's either stagnated or it's been driven into the ground, by previous CEOs. So, if we're going to sustain it and move forward, we got to grow. Dave?
I think you're right, but we also have to be able to get the company back on a stable footing. We have to get quality of service back on track. And, we blame Royal Mail for causing a lot of those problems, but we have to play a role now, and it's in our members' interest, and it's in the interest of customers and the future of the company and future of long-term jobs, to get things back on track. So I think what is the key to growth is to think through that parcels, as Martin explained, is operating in a very competitive environment against multinational companies that deliberately avoid paying national insurance. That can't be right. So we have to focus now and switch our efforts along with Royal Mail and along with pressurising the government and Ofcom to introduce a level playing field, to change the way that the gig economy operates, to create a USO support fund. If you do that, you also then have to create a different growth strategy. And this is again where I think Royal Mail put all their eggs in one basket. They come up and went, we're losing letters, we're going to grow parcels. We want to grow parcels, but we can do it better than where we've been at, and getting through USO reform gives us that platform. But our position is that this company can do a lot more than just growing parcels. It's got a fantastic infrastructure, it's got a fantastic group of workers. If we believe in those two things, we can develop other areas of growth. And that's what we're committed to. That's what EP signed up to. And that's conversations that we're going to be having with the government going forward. Because they, I think, need to recognise that to sustain a universal service, it's got other attributes that could help society from a social point of view and from an economic point of view. And that's where we'll be focusing our efforts once we've got through this agreement.
Excellent. I think it's just come through on the monitor. I think you've convinced someone anyway. Gaz has just put through, when are we getting the pay rise? When are we getting the money, Martin?
5th of June for weekly paid, end of month for monthly paid.
Okay. So, look, thank you for answering all the questions. I just want to sort of wrap it up now for you two guys. Any final messages, starting with Martin, really?
Look, change is always difficult, and we recognise that decision. But if you look at where we are in lots of delivery offices, it's chaos. There's vacancies. When you go on a rest day, you come back with 2 days of work, you get moved, pillar to post. Quality of service is at 70. We know they prioritise tracked parcels, etc. This is a chance for end that chaos and go into a model, because USO change is going to happen. We believe it's better to do that within our agreement rather than Royal Mail's preferred model. And our agreement makes sure there's full resourcing, there's safeguards and protections, added resource, and ultimately some benefits in this. We are convinced this is the time to get the first step on equalisation. This isn't common in British industry. We've got a first step. It might not be where we wanted to, but this company's going to break even this year, and we've got a first step, and we move towards the pathway to equalisation. And we believe that our agreement needs to be supported and needs to be backed. The alternative is not in a good place, not the right move. So we believe it's well worth supporting. We are happy to recommend it, and we ask you to support it.
Thanks, Martin. Dave, final comment?
Yeah, final comments, a few. First of all, this is a good agreement if our members recognise the reality of the environment that we're operating. If people are in a place where, they don't believe change should happen, or they, don't want to be in Royal Mail in that sense, that's not where we are. We are clearly saying, and we're not running away from this, that without change, without necessary change, the company won't survive and prosper. And we ask our members to view this agreement in the context of the reality that they know, what they see day in, day out of where we need to get to. I think if you look at that, the second point I said is does it address the real challenges that we're facing? Well, USO reform has to happen. We support the need for it. Prior to this, a few years back, they were looking at 3 or 4 day deliveries, which would have been disastrous. We've already moved them back to a lesser problematic model. But, the reform that we've got in here, the agreement we've got, has moved Royal Mail away from the model that they piloted. It's put in really strong safeguards. It's put in protections around job security, around what happens to workload, and it prioritises the right things. It shifted the company from just looking at this as a purely financial issue to dealing with it on a basis of quality of service must be delivered. Please have a look at the agreement and you'll see those safeguards are real in this, and this is a different way of operating it. Your local involvement is very, very strong, and we're going to add to that by making sure that our structures are operating consistently to ensure that no single office is left behind in this. And then there's equalisation, and we've given that a lot of discussion tonight. And I think members know that it's the union that's pushed this. We've made a step forward. So we've started to address that problem in a significant way. Always want more, but we've got the opportunity to build on that when the company is in a more stable place. And that's got to be a strong thing. We haven't talked about the commitment that the company's made in front of the government to all of the previous commitments, including equalisation, and including radically changing the way this company is governed. The UK government are involved now. So this question of trust is not in the same context anymore. We've got them viewing it going forward. So that's a good thing. And those other commitments included a new growth strategy. Not where they've been, but a fundamentally different growth strategy. That's what they committed to. That's what we're going to deliver. And again, we need to get through this next step. I think we haven't talked enough, perhaps tonight, about the reality of the quality of service improvement plan. And what does that mean? And this is what I would say to our members about this. You know, through your support, through our members' support and the union's political influence coming together, we got Royal Mail in front of a select committee. That select committee made it clear to Royal Mail, and any of you that watched that will know, that they expect quality of service to improve. And, you know, what I'd say is that we're on that journey now. We can be on that journey of improving quality of service with this agreement and with the quality of service improvement plan that Royal Mail had to commit publicly to because of the work this union and our members done. There's no way back for Royal Mail on that. No more excuses. They've got to move quality of service forward. We're defending the customers here. And, you know, the political involvement that we've got here gives us the opportunity now to deal with one of the biggest problems that we are on the same page with Royal Mail and EP on, which we've talked about tonight, about the way that the competitors unfairly exploit their workers on bogus self-employment, and how the gig economy operates and how Ofcom needs to be reviewed. Now, we've had conversations with government about that, and we are confident that once this agreement is cleared, we will be in that discussion. And we want our members' support on that as well. So, look, here's the key thing. There's chaos out there. It's been going on for too long. It's chaos for our members and it's chaos for customers. This is the best chance that we've got to ending that chaos and to moving everybody forward. And I would say that if you accept the operating circumstances that the company's in and the reality of change, then this is an agreement that is in the interest of our members' future, is in the interest of customers, and is in the interest of the future of the company. So we strongly recommend that you vote yes in the forthcoming ballot.
Cheers, Dave, and I think you've just committed to a number of more sessions to keep the conversation going.
We will definitely do that.
Okay. Okay, so it's just for me
Thanks
to
very much, everyone.
sign off. Thanks to Dave and Martin for answering those questions, and thanks to all of you who have tuned in. Ballot comms will be reaching your home next week, so keep an eye out. Make sure you use your vote and tell your colleagues to do the same. I'll see some of you at conference at the weekend, and remember, always stick with your union. Thank you very much.